The rain hits the corrugated roof like fingers drumming, and the market smells sharp of wet fish and diesel. Tunde sits on the edge of a rusted water tank, his legs swinging in the gray air, and watches people run like herds beneath umbrellas. A bright flash catches his eye, a gold thread glinting as it slips from the pocket of a man who hurries past. It falls, innocent and loud, against the wet tar, and slips into the open gutter with a soft clang. The sound is small, but it rings in Tunde's chest, a bell that wakes something old. The gold chain, like a thin river of light, lies half hidden by leaves and mud. He reaches down, fingers numb from the rain, and lifts it clean. The chain is heavier than it looks, warm from someone's skin. The sight of it makes his palms sweat. It smells faintly of perfume and smoke. For a moment he sits very still, the chain like a bright small sun in his hands. He thinks of the bread he hasn't eaten. He thinks of the mattress on the floor of the orphanage that always smells faintly of soap. He thinks of the fierce boys who trade in small shame and quick lies. He feels the tug of need. Then, with the market noise like a drumbeat in his ears, he makes a choice. He folds the chain into his shirt and starts to run toward the office at the market gate, where small problems become big ones if no one is honest. Tunde knows the rules of this world by memory. The vendors on Lecky Street call him Little One and push away his hand when he asks for a taro. He knows that honesty sometimes draws a laugh, sometimes a slap. He runs past the fish stall where the seller elbows him, past the woman with mangoes who calls out the names of saints, past the man with drums who follows the rain with a song. He crosses a road where a yellow danfo takes a hard turn and sprays water like a wall. The chain presses against his chest, bright and stubborn. When he reeked, he's the gatekeeper, a man named Baba Jide. The old man squints at him through gray lashes. "What have you found, boy?" the old man asks. Tunde opens his shirt and reveals the chain. The metal throws back the light like a promise. Baba Jide's breathing changes, a small sound like a key turning. "This is not market gold," he says. "This is good gold. It belongs to someone who does not lose small things." Tunde hears in his voice the word boss, that low word that makes people step back. The risk blooms like lightning in Tunde's chest. He could sell it now, get some money, buy bread, buy a new pair of shoes. He could hide it and become a small part of a world that never asks to be honest. The chain sits warm and patient. Tunde chooses again. "I will find the owner," he says, and Baba Jide nods like a man who has seen boys make that kind of promise and keep it. He moves from step to step, like a man climbing a mountain. The first obstacle comes like a wall of umbrellas and shouts. The crowd presses, and someone swings an arm that knocks Tunde backward. A tall woman with painted nails frowns and takes a step toward him as if to grab, but another woman recognizes the chain's glint and calls out, "That is Chief Balogun's." Heads turn like sunflowers. People begin to say the name like thunder. Chief Adeyemi Balogun, the man who owns half of Lagos's glass towers, the man whose cars pass like black fish through the city. The word makes Tunde's breath catch. He has seen Chief Balogun on posters, a face carved in smiles, a hand cutting ribbons. He knows the mansions, the stone steps, the guards who wear sunglasses even at night. The market becomes a map of danger. A small boy who once sat at the back of Tunde's class whispers, "He does not come to the market, not for anything." Tunde feels the chain like a hot coal in his shirt, a symbol that will not cool. He moves toward the sea, toward a mansion that sits behind high walls like a sleeping animal. Obstacle 2 waits on the road. It is a row of cars and a clamor of voices, and at the gate, men with crisp shirts and nervous smiles block the drive. The security men wear faces carved from stone. Tunde stands small against them, his shirt soaked with rain, the chain now a secret link between him and a world of glass. "Where do you think you're going?" a guard named Okoye asks. He smells of cheap cologne and iron. His voice is smooth, but sharp. Tunde holds the chain out, hands shaking. "Sir, I found this," he says, voice as small as a mouse. The guard takes a step forward, then another. The camera on the gate blinks. The man with the smooth tie laughs like a knife. "Children make mistakes," he says. "This is not for you." He reaches, but Tunde's fingers are steady. Another obstacle builds when a car door opens and a woman with lipstick like red berries steps out. Her hair is set like armor and she has a badge pinned like a blade. She examines the chain and her face changes in a way that is almost kind. "This is a very old Balogan chain," she says. Tunde says nothing. He thinks of breath and bread and the sound of rain on metal. The woman nods and finally one guard grunts and lifts his phone to call someone inside. The voice on the other end is cold as a winter river. They do not know what to do with a child who chooses truth like a weapon. The third obstacle sits on marble steps inside. A man in a suit with a smile so practiced it looks painted. He calls himself Mr. Okonkwo, head of the household staff. He watches Tunde like a hawk watches a mouse. His eyebrows are two small lines of ice. He takes the chain and examines it like a man reading a map. "This is often on the neck of a very private part of our family," he says. "We will look into it." They lead Tunde into a room where light falls in lines through blinds. The air smells of lemon oil and old money. Auntie is in silk, move through it like leaves. Tunde sits on a couch that is too soft and wonders how many children have sat there and left the same way he arrived, small and empty. Instead of thanking Tunde, the staff ask him many questions that sound like cages. "Where did you sleep last night? Who feeds you? Who is your guardian?" His answers make no sounds inside the rooms of people who pay silence like a tax. They feed him tea that is too sweet. They give him biscuits stored in glass jars and watch him as if he were an exhibit. He tells the truth each time. When the pictures of the chain are shown to Chief Balogan on a video screen, the man's face takes on the shape of a storm. He leans forward, touching the photograph as if he could feel heat through glass. "My mother's chain," he says once quietly, and his voice is lost like a figure off stage. Tunde has seen sadness on faces in the market, but this sadness is heavy like stone. It changes how the house looks. It makes the marble seem small. The fourth obstacle arrives like a masked thief. While the household discusses, someone moves in the shadows. A man named Chukwu, the estate manager, says nothing but watches. His jaw tightens. A rumor runs through the staff like smoke. "Not everyone likes that this child's honesty will shine on us." Rumor is a small spear. The manager moves papers, hides receipts, speaks in private to men with large palms. Someone slips a silver coin into the hand of a guard. It is a small thing, but small things stack and build walls. Tunde notices nothing of the plan. He only notices the chain when it is taken to be cleaned, when a woman with thin fingers opens a tiny locket that sits on the chain and finds a faded photograph of a woman holding a baby. The baby in the black and white eyes looks like a boy with his father's chin and Tunde's own skeptical brow. The woman gasps and covers her mouth. "This is a family piece," she says. The word family blooms inside Tunde like a possible door. But before anything kind can be said, a phone rings and the manager walks away like a shadow. His steps are careful, like hands covering a spill. At the midpoint, the story flips like a coin. The chain is no longer a piece of jewelry alone. It is a map back to a lost history. The photograph in the locket carries a small story. A note scrawled behind the picture, a handwriting like a child's. When the note is traced under light, it reveals a name long thought forgotten. The name is Adeyemi, and beneath it a place, Ogun Village. The caretaker on the staff, an old woman named Mama Aisha, who once worked in the kitchens of Balogan House, recognizes it. Her voice trembles as she tells of a small boy who went missing from a village years ago. a child who looked like the photograph, whose mother gave a chain to her friend before she left for the city. Chief Balogan hears the story, and the house grows quiet as a forest at dawn. All the rules shift. The chain is no longer just gold. It is a memory, a story that might mend something. The staff breathe like men who have seen a miracle and also fear it. In the middle of their fear, Chief Balogan stands and asks Tunde, "Where is your home?" His voice is softer now, like a seed in soil. Tunde says, "I come from Balogan Orphanage." Walls of the room gather the sound, and everyone in the house turns like a flock at wind. The name Balogan ties him by a thread that makes some people smile and some people hold their breath. The twist unravels another truth. Balogan had given to the orphanage for years, sometimes quietly, sometimes in big shows. He had the power to build things, but not to fix everything he had lost. The chain becomes a bridge. Hope walks across it. But a hard choice waits at the edge of hope. The manager, Chukwu, has pockets full of fear. He sees the chain as a way to keep his grip on power. He spreads a rumor that the chain was stolen, not found, that Tunde had planned to sell it. He uses small bottles of lies like knives. He shows a fake receipt, a paper that looks old enough to make even the watchful blink. Security men who once laughed at street boys look at Tunde now with narrowed eyes. The press hears a whisper and it grows teeth. A camera flashes outside the house. Someone from a tabloid has arrived with a grin. They interview guards who say Tunde was found near the gutter, suspicious and sullen. A crowd gathers, and Tunde finds that the same city that will lift you up in a minute will roll you under in the next. The chain that had promised a door becomes a possible chain for his neck. He watches as Chief Balogan is shown a twisting story, lies stacked like stone. Cold doubt crosses the billionaire's face. "We must be careful," he says. The house turns away. Tunde feels small and wrong. Pain arrives like a hard rain. Tunde is taken to a back room and questioned as if he is already guilty. Hands are gentle, then rough. Someone shoves him into the street, a cold night full of cars and distant music. The chain is taken from him by a hand that smells of old money and lies. He hears a smothered laugh as the man walks away, chain hidden like contraband. Tears burn his eyes, and chest pain is a steady, loud drum. The hard choice is a cliff. He can run, hide, disappear into the market and never speak again, keep the pain private and safe, or he can fight with the small truth he has, tell what really happened, and risk the house's anger, the head manager's weight, and being called a liar where the world will watch. The pain is not only his. It is for the photograph in the locket, for the woman in the picture who might be waiting somewhere, for a right that seems to sway like a reed. Tunde chooses to speak. He walks to the center of Balogan Market the next morning with mud on his shoes and the rain blowing in his hair. People gather. The market is a living thing with the sound of knives on boards, the smell of charcoal, the flash of fish scales. He climbs a low platform and calls out the truth in a voice that trembles but does not break. "I found the chain," he says. "I did not steal it. I gave it at the gate to the guard, and they brought me here. I want it returned to its owner." Men laugh, and the laugh is sharp. A woman points and says he looks like a liar. But then a young woman named Nuru, who sells airtime and carries a phone like a small tool of power, steps forward. She has been watching Tunde for days and has the habit of filming life as it happens. She lifts her phone and begins to record. Her hand is steady. "Tell me again," she says. And Tunde tells the story with the cliff-edge truth of hunger and with a voice that is honest enough to break stone. Nuru uploads the short clip to the net of phones that hang like small mirrors over the city. The video flicks out of the market and into other hands like an ember that won't go out. People watch a small boy with a dirty shirt tell the world he is telling the truth. They listen to the crack in his voice and the steady look in his eyes. The city leans in. Public spectacle marches in with the lawyers and the cameras. The clip goes first to a small news page, then to a larger one, then explodes across feeds. Men who once ignored happenstance now call and ask questions. The chief returns to the house, summoned by the little photograph that blooms like a lamp. People crowd the gates and hold phones high like flags. The manager sits in his office with cold skin and a conscience he thinks he keeps hidden. But the evidence, ordinary and bright, keeps piling up. Nuru's video captured a guard putting the chain into his own pocket and slipping it to Chukwu when he thought no one watched. The recording shows the shuffle, the small eyes, the final hand. A second witness appears, Baba Jide from the market, who came to see Tunde and remembers giving the chain to the guard. He speaks on camera, his voice steady with the calm of long memory. An old woman from the cookhouse, Mama Aisha, brings out the battered photograph and shows it to cameras and men who ask how she knows. She tells of a baby in a village, a story the houses of money had thought buried. The city watches. The manager's lies unravel like yarn. He is stripped of power in the place where he once pretended control. The chief calls for the police. Chukwu is escorted out, his face pale and his hands shaking. Men who used to bow now look away. The public sees the proof, the neat, sharp lines of truth. The man who tried to hide the chain is unmasked like a bad actor in a play. The multi-climax is a theater of lights. The chief stands on the big white stairs outside his house, cameras flashing like a rain of silver. He holds the chain. The gold flashes in his hand and sends a warmth of memory into the air. Tunde stands to the side, small against marble, teeth chattering with cold and new fear. The chief speaks in a voice that carries, not loud, but steady. He tells the gathered people the story of the chain, of the photograph, of a mother who once left a village with hope and a small piece of gold tied into a promise. He tells them that a man he trusted had hidden a piece of their history. Tears gather in his eyes. They surprise him and slip down like small secret rivers. He turns then and he looks at Tunde. "You did right," he says in front of the cameras and the city. The word is simple, a light dropped into a dark room. The crowd opens like curtains. For a single breath, the market and the palace are the same place. The manager is led away by men in uniforms, not only to lose his job, but to face charges for theft and for lying to men in power. People stand with their phones and show the images over and over, and the chief strips the manager not only of position, but of the quiet pride he used as armor. The public sees the naked man, and justice feels like rain. After the spectacle, the house opens a door that had been closed by pride and fear. The chief walks with Tunde into a garden that smells of cut grass and mystery. The sky is wide, and the air is thin with a day that feels bright. He kneels near a hibiscus bush and unfolds a map of the town that he has kept hidden in a drawer, a map with a small mark on the village where the photograph's note points. He touches the name Ogun Village, as if tracing an old wound. He tells Tunde that sometimes power is slow to make amends, but can be strong when it chooses to do the right thing. He speaks of the orphanage and how he had given money but had not gone himself. He admits with a humility that is almost raw that he had thought money could mend what memory had broken. Tunde listens, curiosity plain on his face. He questions whether this new promise will last. The chief gives him a look like a binding oath. "Come to the house when you like," he says. "You will eat at my table. We will find out what we can find about your past together." Tunde tastes the words. His life tilts. Time moves and builds slowly like a brick wall. 6 months change faces. Tunde sleeps at a new small house near the gate of the compound, a simple room with light that streams in like hope. He now goes to a local school that Chief Balogan helps fund. He learns new subjects. His fingers are no longer only quick with small theft or barter, but with chalk and new rules. He practices writing, his letters large and slow. The orphanage receives a small grant to fix its roof and buy books. Mama Aisha gets a new stove that does not smoke the house. Nuru grows her small airtime stall into a tiny news corner that tells more of the city's small truths. The chain sits on a clean cloth in the Balogan house, placed on a small wood stand by the chief himself. It is no longer hidden in pockets or gutters. It has a place like a quiet sun in the house. Tunde visits it sometimes and touches the metal with the ease of someone who knows an object can hold a story. The manager who lied is gone, his face blurred by time and shame. The public has moved on, but some people still stop Tunde in the market to say, "You did good." A little offer, a small sound that makes heat spread through his chest. There are hard mornings still. Tunde misses some things like old smells, like the sound of a radio that sat in the orphanage, like the small friend who is now staying with his grandmother in another city. He knows the world carries trouble, but the weight on his chest is different now. It is not hunger alone, but a careful mixture of hope and hunger. The chief keeps his promise. He brings people to sit with Tunde and comb through old records. And once, in the file room, they find another paper, a stamp and a child's name that matches the handwriting behind the photograph. It is not a grand revelation that ties every loose thread. It is a small string that suggests family, maybe cousins, maybe a tie he can follow. It is enough for Tunde to keep going, to learn what it means to be true to himself in a city that sometimes forgets to care. The chain remains a symbol on a stand, and Tunde learns that symbols can be heavy and light at once. 6 months later, Tunde stands at the edge of the market and watches children run with kites. The orphanage roof has been fixed and paint now brightens the windows. There are books on a shelf, the spines new and tidy. Chief Balogan arrives to cut a ribbon for a small classroom, and the crowd gathers, cameras in hands and smiles. The chain is displayed for the children on a small velvet cushion, not to be worn, but to be seen as a story of a choice. Tunde tells the younger boys about the day he found it, his voice steady and clear. The children listen like thirsty plants. He says he almost kept it because he needed bread then, but he did not. He says honesty makes paths, not always easy, but paths that stay. The chief watches him from the front row, a soft look on his face. He and Tunde are still learning each other's names and small kindnesses. The city watches them. The chain glints in the sun like a small star nailed to earth. Honesty opens doors that greed can never build. Do you agree? If this story warmed your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it so more people can feel hope and kindness today. 2 weeks later, Lagos wakes to a sun that bleaches the rain from the zinc roofs and the market's clamor, but carries a tempered glow, and Tunde moves through Lekki Street with the chain resting on a velvet cushion tucked in his bag, the old hunger replaced by a stubborn, hopeful ache that this city might learn to bear truth as a kind of currency. At Balogan House, a courier arrives with a sealed envelope bearing the chief's crest and an invitation to a private meeting at dusk. And when they meet in a study lit by thin lines of light and a map of Ogun village pinned to the wall, the chief speaks softly, revealing the long-hidden truth that he is Adeyemi Balogun, founder and funder of the Ogun Village Heritage Foundation, a network of donors who turn wealth into roofs, teachers, water, and dignified futures for the city's most forgotten. He says the video's power showed him the city needs a face people can trust, and that honesty is not merely a means to an apology but a bridge to a future, and so he has chosen to reveal this now, inviting Tunde to walk beside him as a partner in rebuilding the lives that the chain's light has already touched. Because the chain was never just a prize, but a map to a larger map, a map that leads to Ogun Village, and together they will follow that map. Tunde feels a new hunger rise, not for coins, but for belonging, for a place where a gutter child can grow tall enough to help others. And just as their pact hardens, Chukwu, the estate manager, slips into the room with a smug patience that would have frightened him days ago, muttering excuses as if truth could be siphoned out like fuel, and the chief's voice lowers with a quiet danger, telling him to speak plainly or step into the light and risk losing more than a job. The crowd outside senses the tremor and the city's gaze becomes a blade, and Nuru's phone roars to life, turning testimonies into a living thread that ties Tunde's honesty to a public reckoning, a turning point that feels like rain turning to river. And when dawn comes the next day, the city's mood shifts from suspicion to cautious pride, as the chief confirms that Balogan wealth is real, that a foundation will fund the orphanage's roof and dozens of scholarships, and that the gate's guard who once whispered fear will now serve as a watcher of truth. And as reporters flash their cameras, the market returns with a steadier beat. The teachers smile, the vendors debate, and a reporter's voice carries the news that this is not a man in a distant tower, but a city's guardian stepping into the light. But even as the day breathes easier, Chukwu's shadow lingers, and he tests the wind, bringing a new accusation that the chain was stolen and the video built, a fear that asks whether honesty can survive a last attempt at sabotage, and the chief answers with a hand on the table and a plan, a public audit, a timetable for the foundation's first projects, and a formal invitation to Tunde to join the outreach program that will bring books, water, and a sense of home to Ogun village. The crowd hushes, the room glows, and the moment feels like a hinge in a door, because the hidden billionaire identity has become a visible beacon that binds the city's wealth to its poorest, a reversal where power acts not as a whip, but as a ladder, and the very idea of justice shifts from a distant rumor to a tangible ceremony. In a quieter corner, Mama Aisha presses a faded photograph into Tunde's hands and whispers that the chain's origin may be the key to families once separated, a revelation that redefines Tunde from survivor to ambassador. And as the day folds into evening, and the chain sits on its stand like a small sun in the Balogan Hall, the chief's promise rings through the air. The foundation will be a living bridge, the orphanage a thriving classroom, and Tunde's honesty a compass for a city learning to reweave its own story. And yet a single thread remains, an open question about Ogun village's exact whereabouts and the waiting kin who might yet step forward when Lagos and village roads meet. And so the interval ends, not with a vow fulfilled, but with a door ajar and a plan in motion, a restart of the film where truth has become a doorway to shared wealth and a future in which a boy who once asked for bread now helps lay its breadline, a testament that honesty has opened doors and built pathways, even as the last word lingers in the air like a bell calling the next act to begin.